Hello and welcome to Good Games Well Played, episode 181. I'm Clint, aka JCM. With us this week is Miss I.
Hello.
And Isli has returned.
Yay!
Finally get to talk about Silent Hill after 2 weeks of no Silent Hill talk from him and his thoughts on it. So, but we'll probably be able to get this pretty quick because it's been a kind of a light week. I mean, with the release of Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Dragon Age, the Veilguard, like all the news bits are about that and like tips and tricks and the reviews for Black Ops multiplayer, yada yada. There's not a whole lot else that happened this week, especially because we're kind of in like a quiet time leading up because all the big announcements now are going to be saved for the Game Awards, which are later. Or are they in December? I forget when the Game Awards take place. I think cutoff for submissions for any categories is early November. And then, it's in the Game Awards are going to be in December. So if anybody's got any sort of announcement, they're going to wait and hold it until Keeley's show, most likely, at this point. But we did have some sad news. It's funny, both stories are actually related to Sony in a way. But the first one was that Firewalk Studios got officially closed following the pulling of Concord and the poor launch they did there. Yeah, Sony shut it down. There was a lengthy letter from Herman Hulse talking about it, and it's just like, the discussion on Twitter is all the same, especially from other devs, where it's like, it sucks that a studio can't even have one miss nowadays. Like, you have to come out the gate running. Now, granted, it was a huge miss, but I feel like part of that too is on management. That's something that Phil Spencer talked about with some of the other, like with Redfall, and how they should have been more hands-on with looking at that and not letting them have sort of that autonomy after the acquisition, and because they were focused on doing other stuff. It's like, well, no, you really, like, if you're going to acquire Firewalk Studios, I feel like you should, especially with how much money they needed to raise to get things going, it's like you should have been a little more, like, your due diligence, especially for wanting live service games. Mm-hmm. You should have been more involved.
This was like an epically bad miss, though. This wasn't like a normal small one. I mean, they had one of the worst game launches despite having a solid game in the past 10 years or something.
Yeah, and they did simultaneous PC and console release, which is great. But it's like, where's the timeline look like where this was free on PS Plus, but not PC, or you had a free launch weekend or something, or it was part of PS Plus Extra, so at least it wasn't available necessarily to all the fan base, but it's like, or more just showing it more, like, because the game played well. It looked great. It's like, man, I don't know. It makes me wonder what's going to happen with Fair Games. I mean, we've talked about this previously, like Jade Raymond's game, like what's going on there. Like, you're going to need to really market it more. Like, I feel like I wonder what the marketing budget was for Concord, because I didn't see anything. It's just so weird.
Aside from the initial teaser, I don't remember any marketing for Concord whatsoever.
Yeah, they only showed like stuff at their show. Like, I remember they had the game showcase at one of their, I think it was a state of play, where they had, it's like, oh, our first real look at the gameplay. It's like, okay, we see what it is, yada yada. And it's like, it looks good, but how's it play, this and that. But there wasn't like a ton of pre-release stuff or a lot of people getting their hands on necessarily. I know they had like the closed alpha and whatnot, but I feel like you need to get out there a little more, especially with these kind of games that are, live service. Not having the battle pass is great, but maybe if it was free to play with a battle pass, would it have looked different? Like, I don't know. It's like, it's just sucks that like these people that put so much time and now it's like, it's just gone. It's like, it'll probably never come back. It's like the studios. And then with how much they've laid off across Sony, like, is there any way to do integration of those employees that also got let go? Like, because usually, like, if this gaming is healthy and a studio shutters for some reason, usually they can find jobs at other studios, yada yada, or within if they're underneath Microsoft or Sony, within that group, like, okay, we have spots, people can go over. Not 100% of the employees, but a lot of them who can afford to move, especially if they got families, usually can find work at other studios. But it feels like with the layouts you've had, granted, it wasn't across every single first-party studio that Sony has, it's like, is there room for that integration to bring those folks on? It's like, because usually you see that too, where it's like, with a studio closes, a lot of people are like, hey, we're hiring at Insomniac, or we're hiring over here, or we're hiring here. You see those posts, but I didn't see any of those really.
Nobody's hiring because they just laid off all of their staff.
Yep. So it sucks. It's like, and I wonder too, if, again, and I don't want to repeat stuff that we've said on previous episodes, but like, if they stuck with UE4, if they didn't migrate to UE5, even though UE5 looks great, like I wonder if that would have helped, or I don't know. I don't know what. I'm not a game dev, so I can't speak to it. It's just I wonder what could have been done differently outside of just Sony doing a better job marketing, and perhaps what did the internal reviews look like? Did you have other people come in? Like we talked about how Bungie went over to Naughty Dog apparently and said like, hey, Last of Us Factions isn't doing well, so like try to rework it, and then they just end up canceling it. It's like, did you have other people who do live service games go over and talk to Firewalk Studios and be like, hey, this is good or this is bad or we should try this? Like, I wonder what those conversations were like. But and then that did bring into question our next bit is that Bungie's marathon's apparently on track, but it's too early to be shown off. They released a lengthy dev update video saying that the player character models are still, quote, coming together, while the enemy models are still in the early state.
Whatever that means, I guess.
I feel like the game has been in development for a while for player models to be still coming together, but maybe that's not a true statement.
Yeah, it's therefore, quote, a little too early to show you all it as one piece, game director Joe Ziegler said, as I'm reading this from IGN. They're not all together, but when they all do come together, we really, really are looking forward to showing you what it looks like, especially in play. Yeah, I'm like, the pressure on Bungie, especially, because I think too, we heard, there was rumors that they originally were going to have, like, character creation, but they scrapped it in favor of just pre-made classes to help reduce dev time, which I guess could make sense, but maybe that's something they could patch in later. So, but yeah, it's like, you got to be like, because I was like, man, the other day I was like, I want to play an extraction shooter. But I was like, there aren't many out there that are, great or in the vein that I want to play. And like, no one's going to be like, hey, let's go play Tarkov, just, and I was like, well, they got, Marathon, but who knows when the hell that's going to come out or how far along it is, especially with the layoffs they've had at Bungie. And it's like, I don't know, man, it's rough out there. Like I wonder if we'll just see the kind of the live service model games kind of go away, because it just seems like people are having struggles. Like the only ones that tend to stay around are ones that maybe they had smaller budgets or they manage themselves a little better and they just happen to get lucky at being popular or popular enough to sustain. And if they have, microtransactions or what have you, battle passes,
God, the ones that have actually stuck around recently, like, are there any that have stuck around recently, or are the only oones that are around now ones that actually came out like 5-10 years ago?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like,
because like if you consider Destiny, you've got like
that came out a while ago.
Yeah, Destiny was a while ago and a sequel. Fortnite, I know Fortnite's like a different vein, but it's similar-ish in terms of the market share, I guess. Apex Legends, I can't think of any that are actually recent releases. All of them are like from 5-10 years ago that are already established.
Yeah, I guess when Call of Duty Warzone came out in 2020, that's most recent, but that has the benefit of being Call of Duty. So that's a BR. But I'm trying to think of like other, because even like, Halo Infinite, like that multiplayer is not doing well. Despite being Halo.
Even the Call of Duty one, I wouldn't even consider like a new entry, because it's Call of Duty, just because they added a new like game mode or a similar game mode to what they're going for.
Yeah, I was just thinking like, because I know Blackout like did okay for COD, but it wasn't like, it was different for the battle royale landscape, but it wasn't like that huge. But then when Warzone came out, like that was like, okay, here's like a proper bigger, battle royale from the Call of Duty team. And it's like, okay, now that really like they needed like a second go at it. Like they just scrapped Blackout. Now Warzone, it's just been Warzone, just with different map rotations. They're going the Fortnite route where it's like it's still Fortnite, you just change the map, you have new seasons, whatever, every time something goes along, but like it's its own thing. It's no longer tied to specific games. So it's like it took them 2 goes to really get it kind of tied down, but now that's huge. But like again, you're also Call of Duty. Like if you're anybody else, I won't go off. But yeah, because I'm trying to think of like, within the past, since 2020, I don't think anything after Warzone really kind of took off. It's just, I don't know, not a whole lot of there's got to be like some small stuff again, but it has to be, it's too small for me to know about it, I guess, would be the thing, right? It's got to be some little niche thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's got to be rough, I'm really curious what's going to happen with Fair Games, because of the two games that they have shown that are live servers, Concord and Fair Games, like I was more interested in Concord because I don't know how I feel about like a heist. One, because it looked different character design wise, and where Fair Games, it looks like, okay, it's a PvPvE, that could be fun, but based on the tone trailer they had, I'm like, okay, I don't know if it'll be too mechanically involved for me to want to play it. Plus, it's like, at least that one also looks like a, maybe not an extraction shooter, but it seems like an extraction type game.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very curious how this is going to turn out. So I don't know. I mean, well, it's a big wait and see with all these, and they haven't even talked about, back in the day, they're like, oh, we're gonna have like 12. I mean, we talked about it in previous episodes, like we're gonna have 12 live service games in the works or whatever. A couple years back. It's like, all right. It's like if you cover enough genres, maybe a couple of them will hit with your player base, and then I'd just bounce back and forth, be like, oh, the new season of this one came out. Okay, I'll play it for like a month, and the next season the other one comes out. Okay, I'll play that one, and I'm always jumping between them or whatever. Kind of like FF14. You play it, the content, and then you wait for the next bit. And then you prep for it, and then you play it. You're not always playing necessarily every single day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Which is like it's sustainable for 14 because it's a subscription model. So even if you cancel your subscriptions and stuff like that, but for a like champion shooter or looter shooter or games like that, especially if you put them out free to play, that it's just not sustainable to have that much in the market.
Yeah, it's tough. Like you have to have something like, not that it's a good example because it didn't do well, but like PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, like it's like, okay, it's kind of Smash, but it's all PlayStation. I feel like that's the only way you could do it now with something, would be like, it has to be like, it's this ecosystem or it's this big franchise. That's why I thought like TLU Factions could work at whatever it was, if it was a Division like or what have you, because it's built off this idea of a really, like, the Division's is a good franchise. Like, it's very popular, especially Division 2. It's one of those quiet, popular games with a big player base. It's like, okay, but it's in TLU. And we've talked about this, how there's genres that I don't play, but if they made it around a franchise I like, I'd be like, okay, I'd be more interested in trying it. Like, I'm not one for Smash, but I played PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. But again, that game didn't take off. But it was fun seeing like all those PlayStation characters. Now, you can't do that for every single game type, but something like that. Mm-hmm. It's like, and especially with like games as a service, like, oh, let's do games as a service, live service games. And it's like, okay, but then if these take years to make, you're probably in that, half a year to a year of your planning stages of what are we going to do? What could we do? Let's, pitch, then build off that. And like over the course of those years of development, the landscape changes or it becomes super saturated. And now you're like, all right, well, we can't just pivot because of all the money we put in everything. But then you get hit with a Concord situation because you didn't put money behind it. You didn't, or at least for advertising dollars, you didn't get it out there enough. It's like diversify. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, man. I'm really curious and it sucks too, because like I feel like Jade Raymond, after moving on from Ubisoft, like if it kind of like an Amy Hennig situation where like everything that Amy Hennig wanted to do after she left Naughty Dog was like, it didn't quite get there, like because of cancellations and whatnot, this and that by publishers and the studios. And I feel like all the Jade Raymond stuff, like nothing was necessarily a big hit, or like she went over. I think she went to.
I mean, what else has she done? I honestly can't think of what she did after Assassin's Creed.
That's what I'm saying. Is like after that, like she went to some other places, but she went to, after Ubisoft, she went to EA, and she was a SVP group general manager there, but I'm like, but she wasn't necessarily directly involved with something. Like the only title that she helped on there was Star Wars Battlefront 2, which was better than Star Wars Battlefront, but she hadn't done a whole lot, and she had bounced around quite a bit. Like I thought she also was at the Amazon one for a bit. I'm trying to go back and read some of these things, but I can't, her wiki seems kind of small here. But then she started Haven Studios. And like, okay, well, I hope that does well, but yeah, we'll see. So I'm looking forward to Amy Hennig's game, and hopefully that does well too. But yeah, it's we'll see. It's also about the team, not just one person. But yeah, it's rough. Just that lead time you have, like for games, whenever you start fresh or start something new, it's like, okay, you just got to put years into it and see if people like it. It's got to be rough. But anyway. Moving on for that, there were some. You said there were some FF14 patch notes ahead of the 7.0 update.
7.1 update.
7.1. Apologies.
Mm-hmm.
7.0 would be a huge update. That would be the main one.
7.0 was Dawntrail.
Yeah, right. That would be the major expansion. Yeah. So what are they highlighting? Anything exciting for FF14?
Well, the biggest thing for me personally is they're adding the Echoes of Vana'diel raid, the first stage of it. So they showed. There's a lot in the trailer. It kind of spoils a lot of it, but I watched it because I'm really excited. So, I mean, I guess spoilers, they showed Juno is recreated in it, and it's very cool. The big surprise for me and my friend, we totally weren't expecting, is Sky is beautiful and rendered and amazing, and it was playing the music, and we kind of collectively lost our shit. So, but that's the big thing that they're adding. Of course, they're adding more MSQ, which seems like it's kind of gonna go into the backstory of one of the main antagonists from 7.0, which is kind of interesting the way that they're doing that. Because that was my biggest complaint with Dawntrail as the main story, is it had technically two antagonists. One was like a surprise twist antagonist, but it didn't really. There was a bit of like time skip shenanigans, and so you kind of miss out on this particular character's entire character development, the way that it kind of played out, and so it was very strange. But it seems like it's kind of going to go back and explain some of that backstory, which is fine. I wish it had been in the main the main story to begin with.
Yeah.
Like just making this one particular character like the main antagonist, and then maybe saving the twist antagonist for later in the patches, as they tend to do sometimes. But it's fine. I'm excited for that. Other than that, there's not really a whole lot. Like, I mean, they're going to add a new ultimate raid. They're adding a new, which I'm not going to do. I'm going to watch, probably. I'll watch the world race for it. But they're adding a new thing called Chaotic Alliance Raid, which is like a savage version of a boss fight from one of the first Alliance raids. So it's going to be basically like a 24-man savage kind of raid. It looks very interesting, and I might try it out just to see how absolutely awful it is to do in Duty Finder. But yeah, other than that, it's just the Vana'diel thing is the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to, and probably the one thing that I'm going to do as soon as the patch launches.
Maybe I'm confused on this. Prior to this kind of stuff, 14 was never in the same world as 11, right?
Not officially, but there's a lot of, I guess, like personal canon that Vana'diel could be one of the reflections that they like introduced. That, you know, the source was going back to like Shadowbringers. The world was shattered or like split into 14 different reflections, and every time there's a calamity, it means that one of them has been destroyed, basically. So like we've only gone to 2 other ones so far, so a lot of people speculate like, oh, Vana'diel could be one of the reflections technically, but it's never been officially like confirmed.
Nice.
Very cool.
So there has been a 11 crossover before where it was like
it wasn't like major, right? It was
it was similar to like the FF like 15 and 16 crossovers, where it's just like, oh, something happened and now this person is in Vana'diel because craziness with the reflections and the parallel worlds and stuff like that. It's just like it was basically like Iroha and Shantoto just kind of showed up, and then you do a quest with them and then they leave and you're like, okay, bye.
It was like fan service, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Huh. It could be fun. I've tried to look up videos on it, but it's like all the ones are like 2 months ago from people talking about, oh, I'm so excited, and then they're showing footage of 11. Like, oh, this isn't.
I'll send you the trailer for the new update. Obviously, it has like other stuff in it, but it has quite a bit of the footage that they showed from the raid. So I'll send you the trailer for it. But there's also like screenshots on their the patch page and stuff like that. So it's got kind of like good screenshots of like that kind of stuff and the world and stuff like that. I guess like another big spoiler was like the Archangels are kind of there, and the gear that you're going to get from the raid is the Archangel gear. So I'm going to need that. I'm going to be running
Who
this
the
a
heck
lot.
are the Archangels?
Bruh.
Oh no! What have I asked?
The Archangels were the like super hard BCNM and was
Yeah.
it BCNM? It was a BCNM, yeah, in Sky, and
Yeah, you don't remember
they had like a story behind them.
Yeah, they had
I blanked out the BCNMs because they were so freaking hard to get people to actually want to do.
yeah.
Oh, the Archangels are so hard. They had like the black armor, and they were like shadow versions of. I can't remember the story behind them.
Each of the major, like, because they're all each one of the major classes.
Yeah, one of the like introductory classes, and they were kind of like ghostly looking, and they had these weird marks on them.
Yeah, they dropped the. You get them. They drop stuff, but I forget what did you use with the shards that they dropped?
Oh, they drop stuff?
No way. No. Well, I was trying to remember like what the reason, because they were part of Zalart, right? So it's like I was trying to remember that's the problem too. It's like they were so early on, you probably forgot about it because you probably did all the Zalart missions. Like, was there a reason to go back and do them? Like, I know I guess for the gear, right? Like the abyssal.
Yes, I'm sure. I joined the game so late. It kind of like all the content. I joined during or after the launch of Chains of Promanthea as when I very first played. So kind of like all blended together for me. But also, I didn't end up doing that Sky stuff until way late, until when I was playing the game, just because I didn't really have like a group to play it and stuff like that. But and we didn't even do it very often. We did like, I don't know, we maybe ran Archangels twice that I remember. So I didn't really get anything from it. I just did it to do it.
What the hell is with the FF11 Clupedia where I'm like, I clicked on Divine Might and the video it's showing me is freaking, the embedded video is for the fucking Suicide Squad game. What the hell, man? What the, like, show me the thing. I'm trying to look at Divine Might here. Whatever. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to go back and see. Yeah, because they have all those earrings. So I guess if you wanted to go back and get another ring or something like the Abyssal one was kind of that was a big one because I had dark magic skill, int, whatnot. But
God, I remember getting that earring, and I'm like, I do not remember the fight.
Yeah, they're very pale. They're like the armor's black, but they're pale characters. And usually, I think it's like a couple of. Do you fight all of them at once? I don't remember. But yeah, it's got like it's the Galka warrior, all the races. But it was like one of those late mission fights for Zalart. But anyway, well, that sounds good. I'm curious to see do they plan to do more 11 stuff, or is this kind of like
it's going to be this is the Alliance raid of the expansion, so there's going to be 3 tiers for it. So with every Alliance raid, there's always like the first raid, the middle raid, and then the last raid, and there's always like quest and story that goes along with it. So yeah, there's going to be more story attached to it, and there's going to be 2 more raids basically after that. But they've basically only showed what's going to be in the first one, and then I guess the story, however it develops, will kind of like allude to what content is going to be in the next 2 raids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Cool. I look forward to seeing some of the content. I'm curious. I'm not that I'm going to go back in and play it, but it's always fun to see. All right, well, that's it for the news. Like I said, not a whole lot, just because it's kind of quiet. I'm sure as we get closer to, the Game Awards, that's when all the big stuff will hit. But, oh man, Discord with that spooky sound.
I don't know why it's so spooky.
Yeah. I asked the Cold Stone Creamery does like a trick-or-treat ice cream during the spooky season. I asked, I was like, hey, how long are you guys going to keep doing that? It's like a black ice cream. It's just a cake batter flavor or whatever. But I remember it's like one of my favorites. And I'm like, oh, God, I always get it. Like, I don't eat cake batter otherwise, but I do get it when it's the trick-or-treat version. But like, oh, we're going to have it for like a little bit longer, but it'll go away. Curious when Discord's going to update, get rid of that spooky echo reverb ping sound.
Watch, they just keep it forever, and that's just the new Discord sound.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and jump into what we've been playing. I know we'll start with you, Zai, just because I know since you've gone for a while, maybe we'll have like a big old long list of stuff. So what have you been playing? I saw you in 14. You're just prepping for the update.
Yeah, to nobody's surprise, I am playing 14 again, back with my bullshit. But yeah, I'm just I took a big break from it after a while because I leveled up a bunch of jobs and did raids and stuff. I kind of got burnt out a little bit. So I took a big break from it. So now I'm just getting caught up with like the tomestones and leveling a little bit, just just going in and doing some little stuff here and there. But other than that, I've really only been playing Honkai Star Rail because they recently did an update with that too, where they added more story missions with that as well. So I've just been playing through that.
Nothing.
Same old, same old.
Same old, same old. Not a whole lot. All right. Well, as long as you're having fun.
I don't really know like what to pick up next. I'm kind of like flip-flopping between I Am Setsuna and Alliance Alive to play next because I really should play things that I already own and not buy new things to be obsessed with for a little while. So I'm kind of like flip-flopping between those, but I don't know. I'll probably just continue working on stuff in 14 until the patch update, which is not next week but the week after. It's on the 12th, I think. So next week or this coming week I'll probably just be doing that in my free time.
Nice. All right, Isli, you've been out for a while. Have you been playing? It sounds like you've been out because you've been crazy stuff going on, so you probably have been playing a whole lot since Silent Hill. But what have you been playing?
Well, I beat the hell out of Silent Hill, which
beat the hell out of it.
I did. I went back and I got the platinum trophy on that. I followed a guide the second time so that I didn't have to redo every single little thing, which that was the main one. I really enjoyed it. I'm playing Resident Evil separate ways right now, and I'll talk about the differences in a second because it's kind of an interesting back-to-back to play them both. But Silent Hill was the big one, and I thought it was a really good remake. I thought that, I don't know how much you talked about it, but it had weird pacing issues that I didn't love. Like, I really like the first half of the game where you're actually exploring the town and the town is creepy and you have to go through the apartment complexes and you don't quite know what's happening. And then I kind of didn't like the second half of the game with the extent I thought was great again. But like the labyrinth to an extent, the prison, despite being creepy, I just didn't really love the second half of the game. So I thought the vibes were really good. I thought the combat system was a bit clunky in a way that didn't feel like it was intentional, but maybe instead felt like it was because they hadn't developed the combat system enough. It seemed weird to me, and I struggle with this with every remake, where you have an updated combat system, but then they haven't updated other features of the game. So like the combat system is modernized, but the fact that you couldn't remap where your weapons went was really weird to me.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I felt like I was never using the rifle, but yeah, definitely like being able to swap those around would have been like, hey, this goes here. Like it seemed pretty standard for.
Right. Yeah. And I acknowledge it's pretty minor, but it's more of like if you're going to update the game and the combat anyways, you should update like the combat holistically. Don't just update like one part of the combat and call it a day. And that's kind of what I updated. One part of the combat, called it a day, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was a lot of fun. Good remake in general. Great recreation of Silent Hill in the town itself. I think the pacing was weird, and that was kind of where I left it.
Yeah. So did you? Because I talked about on the podcast, but it was like when I first beat it, the night I beat it on stream. I talked about it kind of at the end of the stream. This night, yada yada, and then when I went back after I beat it, I watched like the endings, and then slept on it, and then like really watching essentially the Leave and the Maria ending, seeing those both really kind of like, okay, I appreciated the story more because it was definitely a game that's like it doesn't tie out until you beat it, and then everything starts to like go back and make sense, or like the all the pieces come together. And I don't necessarily like that in games because it can, that's usually for games. Like I like the twist, like, Metal Gear Solid 3, or something like that, where it's like, oh, you thought things were one way, but then it's like, oh, now this little twist in the end that kind of recontextualizes the story, where this is like now all the pieces, here's how everything fits, yada, yada. And I in a long game like that takes like, I think it took me 15, 16 hours to beat. I'm like, that's just a little,
So I'm curious because I know you already talked about this, but when you say like the twist and everything, you are talking about not knowing that like he killed his wife and everything, and that Silent Hill was kind of like a mind fuck for him, right?
Just like the whole, obviously it takes a long time to get there where it's like, I got a letter, my wife's there. And it's like, oh, but she was, how could she be alive? She died 3 years ago, but it's just, she didn't die 3 years ago. She got sick 3 years ago. And to him she died because she was no longer he couldn't. We talk about this last, so I repeat myself always feels weird, but like the whole he couldn't do the in sickness and in health portion of the marriage. It's just like he wasn't strong enough to deal with that. So in his mind, she was dead to him and everything, and he couldn't deal with what the sickness was doing to her, and then that letter that he has kind of like changes, goes blank and whatever as you go along, and just that whole idea of that's why everything looks so decrepit, because it's a reflection of how he viewed his wife, all the monsters throwing up and everything, all that. Like that's why the Upside Down's so gross, and why Pyramid Head is just that part of him that wants to get rid of all the because it's always attacking those other monsters, and the arms are scared of it. Like it's like, no, we're gonna kill. I'm a cleaner. I want to kill all these ugly things. But like I like seeing that, like, oh, his wife didn't die a couple years ago. He's just not a good guy. This night. So
the reveal that he's like in Silent Hill for a reason, when it kind of clicks, I do think is kind of nice. They executed it well. I did like the different endings, but I do think parts of the game feel dated. Like the endings basically coming down to a crapshoot of what you get. And I say a crapshoot just because when I did my second playthrough, I saved instead of doing the other 7 endings. I saved after getting all the items, and it's like, wow. So pretty much none of the decisions matter until the last half an hour of the game. And I like looking up guides. They say it matters. But then if you can get them all based on the last half an hour of the game, I kind of say like it doesn't really matter if all of them can be overridden in the last 30 minutes. So it's got weird artifacts of like old game design where it's like, well, endings, but they don't really matter because they don't really affect many choices throughout the game, and they don't really reflect playing the game a different way. They basically just reflect, 2 choices you make or items you inspect. And those are, I don't know, those are kind of weird to me. I will say, in terms of positive stuff, I thought that all of the environments were really suitably spooky and cool and kind of creepy. It's definitely not like a typical horror game. It definitely is more of like a psychological game where you're kind of trying to figure out what the hell is going on and why James is in this place. And like that part I really enjoyed. I just think they executed the psychological portion better in the first half than the second half. So like, in the first half of the game, you have that transition from the old apartments to the otherworld apartments by like stepping over the alley. Then the camera pans down and it's like a weirdly deep alley or like gap between the buildings. And I thought that was really well done. But then the transitions later on of like James jumping into holes in order to get to the prison and the labyrinth were just kind of like, all right.
Oh my God. The whole jump confirmations piss me off so much. It's like, are you sure you want to jump down the hole? I'm like, just go down the hole, James. It's like, stop making me confirm it like 3 times.
Like, no, obviously I don't want to jump down the hole. Obviously.
It's like, I get it that, hey, it's a point of no return, but it's going to auto-save down below. So it's like, if there was something like 1 is fine, but making have to like convince him to jump down like 3 times, whatever, is so annoying. Or like, also when I reach into like a toilet or a wall to grab something, it's like, just grab it. I don't recall any instance of where like when you grab the thing, suddenly there was a world state change where now it's like, oh, I bet you weren't prepared, so yada yada. It's like, no, just reach in the bloody glory hole and grab the item. Damn it. Come on.
No,
why did I press it 3 times?
There was no instance like that in the game where it actually like, I hate to say it, but no instance where that actually mattered. I suspect that they were just trying to show like, oh, he's not quite sure. He's hesitating.
This is gross. Yeah.
But the reality is like, if you're going to show the hesitation, you should show it elsewhere in the game too. Such as the very first start of the game when Angela is like, you shouldn't go in there, there's monsters. And then James is like, I don't care what happens to me. Well, it's like, okay, well, if you don't care what happens to you, then show that throughout the game, like jump in the fucking holes. Like it doesn't need to be a 3-button prompt thing. He's already committed to killing himself essentially.
Yeah. And then, but yeah, I enjoyed it. Again, seeing the 2 main endings. It was funny though, like I talked about it last time, but that final fight where like it cuts back to gameplay, like it shows a cutscene of box monster going down, and they're just laying there on the ground, and like I just pulled out my pistol, like gave it a double tap, and that triggers the cutscene for the end. I'm like, oh, I wonder if there was like any sort of conversation that could happen if you just walked up to Maria and be like, if she tries to convince you, like, stay here or whatever. But I was like, no, I just shot her, and like without realizing it was going to trigger a cutscene. I was just like, I just wanted to do it just because I thought it was funny. And I was like, oh, I guess I triggered the final bit of the cutscene.
I guess I won? Question mark.
I guess I got it. Now let's talk to the ghost of my dead wife, who I confessed to that I hated her because she was sick. But yeah, it was I did like it in the end, and especially I thought the Maria ending was really interesting, just for that final bit. Again, repeating myself from last time.
Yeah,
but
sorry, go on.
When they're going to the car and she coughs and he goes, "You should get that looked at," and I just love that bit where it's like, you're just repeating the cycle, my dude. You're the same thing you had.
You didn't learn
wife.
anything.
Yep.
You just suck.
Yep.
I do love the endings and how they wrap up the story. It's a solid game. It definitely is a dated game, though. Like, so many of it are dated games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it was good. I enjoyed it. I will admit that my second playthrough, I was definitely like, oof, there are definitely parts of this that are too long. Like the hospital section, really long.
Man, there's not as much Pyramid Head as I thought there would be in that game.
Yeah, I mean, so this is something I wanted to talk about based on the movies. So you had asked the question about like Silent Hill 2 and the creature designs and everything, and thinking that like Pyramid Head and the sexy nurses and things like that were more common throughout Silent Hill. But I feel like that is something like Silent Hill 2 was the one that had all of these creatures in it. And that is kind of why Hill 2 is famous, is because it had great creature design that became popular. But I honestly feel like Silent Hill 2 became popular after the fact because of the Silent Hill movies, which had really good visuals and introduced the concept of like the nurses being blind and all of that. And I wanted to talk to Zaya, like, were there any other Silent Hill games where the nurses were actually blind and hunted by sound like in the movies?
I mean, not really, because they're
in
later games, but of course they react to sound. But in the older games, things kind of just like aggro you no matter what.
Yeah,
and you can kind of like use that to your advantage, where you can like get around them and stuff like that. Like there's not really any creatures in the older games that have gimmicks like that. It's kind of a newer thing. Yeah. Everything just kind of aggroes to you.
Probably a system mechanic thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it was, I don't know, it was interesting to me. Well, I don't remember Silent Hill 2 ever being quite as popular as Resident Evil. It feels like Silent Hill became popular or more popular after the fact. And replaying this game, the remake, it feels like they are reacting to like fans loving the movies and really embracing that with like the creepy nurses and how they stand and how their heads shake and stuff. And all of that I feel like actually came from the movie and not the games, which made me really appreciate the actual remake, because it made it feel like, oh, maybe a remake was deserved. The original Silent Hill was a cult classic, but like wasn't actually a mainstream success. This one feels like it is a mainstream success.
Yeah, it was very much, the older games were very much like, you don't play them for the gameplay, basically, because the combat was clunky, obviously, because it was all tank controls and locked camera perspectives and stuff like that. But also, it's just like the main gameplay loop of the originals, I guess, is just avoiding everything, and then you fight the bosses, pretty much. So it's like, I think that's what a lot of people had problems with the remake. Like you mentioned, I've seen a lot of people complain about the pacing of it, how some sections seem longer than they need to be, while other sections seem a little bit cut short and stuff like that. But also just like the amount of forced combat. Like there's not really many situations where you can just like run through a room and avoid things and stuff like that.
Correct.
But
there were definitely like combat encounters I really didn't like too. Like I played on whatever the hardest difficulty was the first time around, and it definitely changed the boss encounters from scary to frustrating. So I feel like this is always like a weird balance of difficulty settings in horror games, is that the harder the difficulty setting, typically the more spongy the enemies become, or the quicker they kill you. And thus the game actually becomes less scary because you have to replay sections 2 or 3 times. So then you know where everything is and you don't really have jump scares. I kind of feel like the best way to play Silent Hill is probably on just the normal difficulty setting. so that you don't die, and therefore it remains creepy to you. Like death in a horror game and having to replay sections eliminates the horror to me, because then it becomes like an action game of like, okay, this is actually just a hard boss. It's not a scary boss. And I had that instance a lot with Silent Hill 2, where bosses went from being scary to hard because I died frequently on them.
Yeah, and it sounds like the puzzles are definitely aren't worth doing on the hard mode versus just playing it on normal for those. Shame you can't. Could you pick each one separately, difficulty settings for combat and puzzles in it, or was it under one just difficulty umbrella? I don't remember. I think you could in the remake choose the difficulty for each. Like if I wanted hard enemies but normal puzzles, or hard puzzles but normal enemies, I think you're able to
you could
do that, right?
Choose them separately in Silent Hill.
Okay. You can choose the game and the puzzle difficulty separately.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know that the nurses are in because like they're in one, but they're not nearly as bloody and wobbly because it obviously looks janky because it's already PS1 anyways. And then they still have the bobbly heads in the OG one, and they're all bloody looking, dragon hobbling around with their pipes. But there's definitely way too many enemies in the game. I feel like there needs to be less, because it's the best bits of tension are when I'm like, because I'm so used to enemies always being around, especially when you collect an objective item or something. It's like anytime I go back and there's no enemies, I'm always concerned, like, wait, why is there no enemies around? Like all the way back to the main area is like just nothing, and then I get kind of tense. I'm like, uh-oh, why are they when they come out? It's like they just needed to cut back on them.
Freaking prison, I struggled with that because it's like, okay, so obviously every time I pick up a weight, a bunch of enemies are going to spawn, and I have to either run past or kill said enemies. And that's where I was like, there's just too many. Like, I liked parts of the prison where you had mannequin creatures above, and you had to like debate whether you wanted to try to shoot them or run past.
I hate
well, that part I actually felt like it worked. I don't like the mannequin creatures. You had to make the choice between running past the mannequins or trying to kill them. So specifically like the spider-like ones. I liked that. But I don't like the enemies themselves. They're really fucking annoying. But in the prison, it accomplished it really well because like, the enemies are above you. So it's like, okay, what do you do? Do you have to pan up and like look up and try to find them in the darkness, or do you just run for it with the sound? And that was a really good balance. Other areas of the game, though, if you see like a mannequin run straight in front of you and like stand in a corner, you kind of know, okay, well, I know I have to kill this because if I try to run past it, it's just going to attack me from behind and hit me twice since it moves really fast. So there's no tension there because you have to fight it because the enemies are just really hard to avoid. Like you can't really avoid most of them. You can run around the spitters, but I guess the same thing applies to like the start of the game in actual Silent Hill. When you're in the town outside in not South Vale, whatever it is, the basic enemies that like vomit at you, you can definitely just run past them.
Yeah.
So that part was nice. Yeah.
Because like you don't have a whole lot of stuff and
yeah. The later part of the game though, you fight everything.
Yeah. I hate to. There's this one bit early on in the game where it's like, oh, the objective is to like you're looking for an item, and then you also got to get to a phone booth or like a telephone, and then it's like you get to the phone, you answer the phone, but he doesn't pick up the item in the cutscene. So then when I walk away and I open up the map and look, it's like, hey, you forgot some back at the phone booth, and I'm like, why didn't you just pick up the item in the cutscene when I got there? Like, why did I have to answer the phone, get a cutscene, and then walk away and miss out on this item I had? I didn't see the prompt to pick up. It's like, come on, man, just do them both in the same go. But yeah, definitely too many. Because when you get to the island later, and it's like, okay, then there's like not that many enemies until you get into the side rooms. I'm like, okay, this is fine, because it's like, okay, now I felt like they toned it down a bit in that last section. I was like, okay, that's nice, but I wish you kind of did that a little bit more in other areas, or maybe they could have done with like I did like that prison bit with like the invisible enemy running around, but it didn't. I thought it was gonna like be a bigger thing later, and then I thought the lights were gonna play a bigger thing in there. I talked about, but like
the weird prison enemy, like when you're I have no idea what it was, but yeah, when you have to hide in like the jail cell and there's like a creepy enemy outside, and you're like, what the fuck is this? And then it just doesn't come up again.
Yeah, and then that doesn't happen. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I like you're finally doing something different, and then just out in the courtyard just running around, you can't see it, and then like I assume like every time I went to go put the weight on the scale, I'm like, is that thing gonna come attack me? What's gonna happen? And then you finally finish, it's like, now the light's drawn, now you just solve the puzzle at the thing, like you don't fight any invisible enemy or anything. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, when I realized the courtyard was just spooky vibes and there are no enemies out there. It's just a big old spooky courtyard. I definitely kind of had a moment of like, what the fuck is the point? Like, weird game, good game. But after Silent Hill, I've been playing the Separate Ways DLC, and it's really interesting to me because, man, Silent Hill, when I was playing it, I was like, this doesn't really feel like a horror game. It feels like kind of psychological tension, but then playing Separate Ways DLC, I've definitely just had the opinion of, oh, this is straight up just an action game. This isn't horror at all. It is solely action.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Silent Hill is like a horror game. It's just a different type of horror.
Yeah, like the only really scary parts of RE4 were, for me, when you get into the sewer and you have those invisible bugs and you hear them like splash, 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 and they're like splashing towards you. Or then when you fight the like the tension of fighting the big old roach enemy that you have to like freeze or whatever, like dealing with that, like that's the tension of I gotta get to the room and oh he's coming, okay, I gotta plan this right and execute it perfectly before I get attacked. Like there's tension there, but like the spooky vibes of just being in the sewer and the invisible bugs in the OG one, because I don't recall if they were there in the remake. At least I don't remember being spooked out by them in that game. But yeah, it's definitely more actiony. Yeah. Like I said,
good games, though.
That's good. Yeah, I didn't play the Separate Ways remake DLC because I'm like, well, I already played this. I don't necessarily need to. I'm not gonna. I don't need to go back and redo that. But I ended up playing Carrion. It was on sale for PlayStation. I picked it up, beat it over the course of a couple days. It's like that reverse monster game where you play the monster that escapes the labs, the side scroll. It came out in Switch originally, I think in 2020 something. And then later it came to PC and PlayStation, but it was on sale for like $5 for PlayStation. So I grabbed it, and that was fun playing around. The downside was like there's no map, and that was rough.
Which I still think is crazy for a Metroidvania type of game.
Yeah, there's zero map at all in a Metroidvania. So like, how do you navigate to previous rooms?
I mean,
even old Metroidvanias have maps.
Well, it's fine because like eventually you get the ability where like you can. Because I feel like it's a game that's best played in one sitting. Because then it's like, oh, I unlocked the ability that lets me break down barriers. Now I know where that barrier is. But it's just, it definitely, like, what killed me the most was I did get lost the first night I played it, where like I got the ability to break down some walls, and then trying to remember where that wall was I had to break. And there were so many false walls in other parts of the map, like it took me a while. And then the second night, I was going to stop it in what I thought was a good spot, but then I decided, no, I'm going to play a little longer. So I played longer, but then I got to the point in the game where, light spoiler, but like you get to the point where once you finish the area that I did, you end up looping back to the first area of the game, but now because you've got all your new abilities, you actually can explore more of that area, and that's the final section of the game. But I didn't know that at the time, so I just stopped, and like I spent like the next night I played it, I spent like 50 minutes trying to figure out like what the fuck do I do? And then I had to like look up like a like this is where you go first, this is where you go next, just to kind of figure out where the hell I go. And I'm like, oh, I got to go back to this area. So I kind of like just went zone, found. I'm like, okay, here we go, and finished it. But like had I not had to deal with that, like it would have been fine. But I mean, fun game overall, like fun little puzzles. They do some unique stuff with like the size of the monster to give you different abilities, and the way you use those puzzles to solve, or use those abilities to like solve puzzles or what have you. It's fun. And like I said, it's a short game. I beat it in 3 nights plus the DLC. And it's so like, 5 hours or whatever. You can beat it faster if I didn't have that get lost for 45 minutes bit. If you just played it in one sitting, you'd be good to go. But yeah, fun little game. I definitely recommend it. It was fun being the monster. And then after that, I picked up Dredge because I tried playing Dead Island 2 because it was free for PS Extra, and then I just wasn't feeling it. Just too much. Dying Light's just so much better. That going back to that, and it's not open world. It's like open area, but the areas aren't that big. It takes way too long to go, and there's too much dialogue. The tone is just, I can't deal with like the goofy tone. Not that the original Dead Island wasn't necessarily goofy, but it's like
this is all unlike you, because usually you play like every game.
Yeah, but it's tough. I mean, it's not the same team. Obviously, it took a long time. It was in dev hell. It bounced developers over the course of the thing, and like again, Dying Light's just such a better game. It's just like I can't like not being able to jump. It's like, oh, I got to get through a gate, and it's like I need the gate code. I'm like, just jump over the gate. Like you got the zombie virus in you. It's giving you special abilities. Like you can't just jump over the gate, and like it's so frustrating. That's why Dying Light's like so much better, because then it's like the environment becomes part of the gameplay, and it's just so good. And like I can't go back to that. Oh, I'm stuck in a courtyard until I kill all the enemies, and then yada yada. And so it's just, I don't know, man. I couldn't deal with it. And again, I slogging through the story just was annoying, and the dialogue. I'm like, I can't do it with this dialogue, man. It's just, I'm not in the mood for this. So I had to scrap it. Like, I mean, I wouldn't have bought it anyways. It had it been, I mean, I didn't buy it when it came out, so I luckily playing it for free just to see what it was like. I probably would have stuck with it if I was playing it multiplayer, like co-op. But I just had to drop. I'm like, I'm over it. So I picked up Dredge, and I'm playing Dredge. I'm really close to the end of Dredge. I'm for those who have played it, there's like essentially 4 island areas. You're looking for artifacts. I'm looking for the 4th artifact in the top right island area. And I'm there, and that's where I stopped last night. And that's a fun game. It's like all the fishing mechanics are fun, like all the little puzzles. I do like some of the other mechanics, like staying out too late, and your spooky meter getting filled up too much, and now you start getting attacked by more and more crazy things because you got the insight to see all the monsters and all the different stuff that can just happen. And then I had one bit I haven't posted. I gotta post all the VODs to YouTube, but I had one where like there's all these like ghost ships that are just like you out in the water, and like they'll honk back if you honk your horn at night, which is really funny. And I did that in one clip, and I honk and he honks, and I'm like, hell yeah, he honked back. And then like I see him. And he's out there, and then all of a sudden the boat like turns and looks at me and starts coming out. Oh, he's coming right towards me, my bro. And then the boat disappears, and it's just giant anglerfish. And I'm like, oh, it's gonna get me! And I panicked because I was like, I didn't realize that they were just trying to bait me to go near them to eat me.
You had one moment. You had one moment that I was watching on stream that was cracking me up because you saw a ghost ship and you were like, oh, I'm going to follow the ghost ship. And it baits you directly into a bunch of rocks. And you were instantly like, oh my God, there's rocks everywhere.
Yeah. I was like, damn it. Yeah. That's the way they have like the whole vision thing, especially early on when you don't have a lot of light. And it's like the rocks, you just can't see them and they just manifest and you crash into them. And when you like lose like losing access to an engine, whatever, but like losing a fish, oh man. And if you have too much crazy, and then like all these birds start flying over your ship and they start stealing your fish, and I'm just like, I need the fish to turn on a quest to stop it. But I like it so far. It's like it's the objective in every area, finding the artifact. It's always like, okay, there's someone here, like there's something stopping me from getting the artifact in this area, but there will be someone there that will help me. But it's always like different, like what you have to do. Like there's like this scientist you find, and you have to do something special, but there's like a unique challenge to actually exploring a big area of the spot you're at, and like upgrading your fishing rods and I did this thing where like I upgraded this equipment. I was like, oh, I want this equipment. It seems really good. But like I couldn't install it because I had to upgrade my ship first. And I'm like, oh man, I have to upgrade. It's like I bought too high of a piece of gear that my ship's not the right size to actually fit that gear on there. But it has a lot of fun stuff in there. A lot of ways to make money too, like the crab pots, which I hardly ever use, but could be a great way of passive income. But the trawl nets are like my favorite because like, okay, you just put those out and just go from point A to point B and you just get a bunch of passive fish, and like that's really nice. But it's a fun little game. I definitely recommend it. I'm enjoying it. And then I'm curious, like
it's a really good balance between like, it's not really spooky, but it's kind of like, it is a very, very light, chill horror game, which isn't how I would describe most horror games, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun when I played it, and I also thought it was like weirdly relaxing. I played that, but they're totally different types of games. But yeah, Dredge is great. Everyone should play Dredge.
Yeah, you're getting hit by the fog in your microphone, but you keep like doing this thing where like you'll cut out. You're like, it's weird.
Like, just cut that out. I was just
no, it's funny.
I got a shitty laptop. I got shitty internet. I got to upgrade both. I'm poor, so
no worries. Did you play the DLC, the Iron Rig or whatever it was?
No, I haven't played the DLC. I want to, but no.
Yeah, because it's on sale. I thought I'm picking up. I think there's like 2 of them. I was like, oh, I guess I could, but I don't know if they take place like before the end or after the end. Because I'm like, that's the only thing about knowing that a game has DLC. It's like, okay, is that like, does it mean that some games are like, okay, once you beat it, like there's an ending, but they open world games do it like, okay, it ends and maybe the MC dies. But you can return to the point right before the final mission and keep exploring and do side quests you didn't finish. So I'm like, okay, there's DLC. So does something bad not happen to my character? You know, like that's kind of being hinted at with all the crazy stuff that's going on. Do I save the world from the evil forces out there? Like, it seems kind of spoilery that there's DLC because I'm like, okay, well, does it take place beforehand? Do I like flashback? You know, what's going on? But, you know, fun little game. I'm enjoying it. I'll probably, I mean, again, I don't know. I'll probably finish the one section I'm at tonight, but then there's got to be something that's going to be after it. And there's like so many upgrades for my ship I haven't done yet. So I'm like, is there, because I feel like a lot of games really kind of balance their upgrades with the duration of the game. Like some games let you get max upgrades like 3/4 of the way through, which is really nice because it's like, okay, now my investment into my upgrades was well spent because now I got to do like all this end game stuff with it. But this, I feel like I'm getting close to the end, but I don't have like the max, you know, ship upgrades. Or is it one of those games where it's like you're not going to max out 100%, but you could max out 100% of one upgrade path? And so like, is it like, oh, do I have like, you can get the best engine, but you're not going to have the best fishing rods?
I honestly can't remember how much I upgraded in that game.
And the only reason I ask that is because in order to upgrade your ship, you have to upgrade all 4 of the upgrade options ahead of time. So it's not like I can be like, oh, let's upgrade all my rod spots so I can have like the biggest fishing rod, but I don't expand how many spaces storage capacity I have. So it's like that's the trade-off. Or it's like I could upgrade my engine so that way I have more engine spaces so I can get through the area faster. And it's like I feel like it's designed around that, but because you have to get all 4 of them, space, engine, you know, I think lights and something else, like because you have to do those, it feels like, well, if you're making me do all 4 of them, then I feel like I should be able to do 100% of everything then before the end. But I don't know. It feels like maybe the final thing I have to do is like a long checklist of fetch quest stuff I have to do. But yeah, otherwise it's fun. I enjoy playing it. But yeah, that's I'm trying to see if there's any other notes I have here on. I think I took any notes. Yeah, I didn't take any notes on it. But I'm having fun with it. It's a good time. All right. Well, I guess we can wrap it up there. I don't have any other thing going on. I tried to look to see if there's anything major that I missed, but again, there's nothing because it's light. So, all right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. So, thank you all for tuning and listening. Thank you, Isli. Thank you, Zaya, for joining.
Yep.
And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Later.